Good evening and welcome to the Spencer Board of Selectmen March 16th, 2015 workshop. If you could all rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have people putting together presentations for this evening, so I will let the administrator open up on an update on the budget, especially that
So a couple things. We have three things on the agenda tonight. One is the pavement management discussion. That's Bill Scarpati from FST and Steve Tyler. They'll be down in a minute. They're just printing out some copies and they're going to do some handouts. And I did have planned performance management discussion with police and fire, but we're going to put that off till next Monday. We have another meeting on the 23rd. And then the other thing I had on the agenda tonight was the draft annual town meeting budget, and as part of that discussion, I was going to talk, draft annual town meeting warrant, and as part of talking about the warrant, I'll also talk about the budget. So maybe the first thing to do is probably the simplest thing, because I got to take minutes too. So let me catch up here, is maybe just go through the warrant. How you doing? Yeah. So if everybody has a copy in their packet that I provided, a copy of the warrant. I think this will be it for in terms of questions, and maybe there's some language and some missing numbers and account numbers that I'll have to add, but I think from a formatting standpoint, it's in pretty good shape. But so as usual, the first thing on the front is all the open positions, and then also any ballot questions. So I'm going to hold off on talking about the potential ballot question on the bottom until I get to that later, because it's a two-pronged process. One is town meeting and one is the election, because we may have other election questions that we want to talk about. But the first item, the first article, Article 1, as usual, is to balance the current year fiscal budget that we're in. So that's FY 2015. So as is typical, we will balance our snow and ice deficit. We have some free cash that was certified last fall. I believe we did use some of it at the fall special town meeting. And then we will have our first use of free cash is to balance FY 2015 for unforeseen expenses. So that includes the snow and ice. As you know, we did a reservation, if you will. We reserved $300,000, allowing the highway department to spend an additional $300,000 this year, obviously due to the storm events and the amount of snow we've had this year. And I think Steve will be coming in next Monday to talk about. I think he's going to need another sum of funds. I think it may be only $25,000, but he's going to come in next Monday and talk about that. And he'll have an updated information on that. I have a shortfall in the police department salary. I have a memo from the police chief. We had a number of events that required details and a number of officers on call. Some certain emergencies, such as the incident a couple weeks ago with the child that was kidnapped from Delaware. So we have some additional salaries there. Expenses, I think it's related to some of the mechanicals, but I will give you a copy of the memorandum that he gave and how that $6,000 is calculated. Fire department salary and wages, that was for one of the employees, Mr. Bradshaw, to help with the boiler project. He was also working for the highway department, so I need to add that money. That money is usually reserved for the actual firefighting, but we did have an employee that helped us out from the fire department to work on that project. And then transfer station, as you know, I think one of the things we did, we reserved in the expense budget, I think a dollar amount for the hauling. I think it was estimated about $300 per haul. And it actually came in at 500, so that's short. So we're gonna have to put some money in this budget to balance it.
We had some other expenses down there.
Right. So that'll take care of FY 2015. You'll see some of the X's. I just don't have the exact numbers yet. We're gonna close the warrant 2 weeks from tonight, so I'll have all that information for you. So consider this, as I do with my staff, as placeholders. They let me know I'm gonna need some more money. This happened. I'll give you a memo. Hold the spot. Article 2. This is for the town accountant office. So as you know, our town accountant had semi-retired a couple years ago. She had been working as a full-time position. I had put money into the expense budget for replacing her with a consultant until we actually went to the time and actually rehired that position. She actually decided, or she worked with us to stay on for 1 day a week. So I've been paying her out of the salary account, but the money was in the expenses. So I'm just moving it from the expenses to salary just to pay her, okay? So, Article 3, this is for the sewer department. They have, sewer department has some transition with their superintendent retiring at the end of the year. So what they're gonna be doing is they're transitioning one of their current employees into that position. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna advertise, fill the vacated position while our existing superintendent can train that person moving up, and we'll have a full, complete staff. So that's being paid out of retained earnings or their version of free cash. Article 4 is our housekeeping article. No changes except for the dates. So that includes planning board revolving fund, Sutton Block, wiring inspector, parks, celebrations committee, etc., etc. All right. Article 5 is the elected officials' salaries. I think the only two that changed on this are the treasurer and the town clerk. They're essentially, we treat them as if they're full-time town employees, 40 hours a week, salary positions. So those, just as you'll see in Article 6, we have a budget of 2% increase for all of our personnel bylaw employees. If you recall, we came to terms with our 4 collective bargaining units last year. They had a 1%, 2%, 2% increase over 3 years. So we're in this will be year 2, starting July 1st. So we figured we'd keep this group in line with all of our other groups and change those positions to, by 2%. So there's only a couple full-time positions, as I mentioned, the treasurer, collector, and town clerk. We treat them, the assessor, the library director, but most all the other positions are part-time. Everything from an animal control officer to the council and aging director, tree warden. A lot of these are hourly positions. This includes firefighters, anywhere from $9.75 an hour up to $18.65. So 2% budgeted, keeping in line with the other employee groups. Article 7, something we've been talking about for over a year now, is to amend the personnel bylaw. We, prior to the town administrator form of government coming into play, there had been a personnel board. The personnel board would review all employee evaluations, would sign off on any of the changes in their fee, in their payment structures. And then since the town administrator form of government came in, I pretty much do all of that. I go over all the evaluations. I evaluate my own staff, department heads. So rather than, I've been talking with the personnel board, and they've kind of agreed with me that it doesn't make sense when I'm the one working with these people, they're a volunteer board, for them to do an evaluation and sign off on someone's evaluation. The form of government has changed. So I just need to amend the personnel bylaw to change the language regarding the personnel board to the town administrator. So that's something I need to work on in the next 2 weeks. Article 8 is the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District budget. I'll go over that when I go over the whole budget stuff, but as I have been doing, I separate into the 4 main blocks of the minimum local contribution, which obviously we have to deal with, the transportation assessment, something else we'll have to deal with, debt, which is our obligation, and also the additional local, which we'll talk about. I'll talk about that when I go over their budget, and I'll also talk about the contingency for the election question if we need it. Article 9 is the Bay Path Vocational Regional School budget. Same thing, it's separated into 4 blocks. In this case, it's the operating assessment, which is the minimum local only. Transportation assessment. Our buy-in debt, this is year 9 out of 10. And then our debt that's associated to the addition project that they're constructing now. Article 10 is our out-of-district vocational student at Smith. Article 11 will be the one for Norfolk.
Oh, Tantascwa.
I'm sorry, Tantascwa. We have 3 students at Tantascwa. And then Article 12 is for the student at Norfolk County. Article 13 is the general government operating budget. That number is going to change. I'll go over that again when I talk about the budget in a few minutes. Article 14 is the water department's budget, which includes their main portion of their budget plus their reimbursement to us for indirect costs. Article 15 is the sewer department budget, which is the same. It's their overall budget, including under item 2, their indirect costs reimbursement to us. In their case, however, they will have, and actually you guys saw, the couple of you guys were at the finance committee meeting last week. They went over this. They have $162,000 in retained earnings that they're going to apply to next year's budget, so they don't have to increase their rates, and they can do some capital work. Article 16 is capital work for the water department. That's being paid for by retained earnings. That's going through the capital committee, which has a meeting tomorrow night, which they'll also deal with Article 17. So Article 17 will be our capital plan outside of water and sewer. And I think we'll have somewhere around maybe $400,000 worth of projects that will be assigned to this item. And they're going to go through their rankings tomorrow night. And then I'll put together a spending plan, and you guys will have an opportunity to view that, make any changes before we adopt this article. Article 18 is related to the transfer station. Going back now 6 years ago, I don't know why they did that. It was before me. It was Town Administrator Guida and Superintendent McNeil at the time. If you recall, as part of the Wheelabrator contract and the savings that we were going to incur, FlexCon donated $170,000 to the transfer station. That could be used for capital projects, and we could use it for anything at that time. What they did back in 2009 was had an article to specifically use, which technically they didn't have to do. All they needed to do was get a capital committee vote. Reserve 130 of that 170 for transfer station trailers. What I'd like to do is change the language to that to be allow us to use it for any transfer station project. Still use it for the transfer station, complying with the gift that we received from FlexCon. And then that money would obviously still go through the capital committee and then back to you guys for a vote. It just takes away the authorization that, you know, they can only use it on, right now it can only be used on that, and we don't have that need right now, so. Article 19 is authorization from the voters to sell Maple Street School, just as we did with the Sugden Block. In order to dispose of public property valued over $25,000, we have to get authorization from town meeting. Article 20, this is from the Board of Assessors. There's some land in town that's owned by some folks on Stiles that there's a sliver of land in their property that goes through their driveway that's owned by the town of Spencer still. And it obviously shouldn't be. It's just lost in translation over the years, so we'd like to correct that, and it's basically just giving it to them. Article 21 is a gift. I had a property owner purchase a piece of property. It has a piece next to it that has a wetland on it, and they're not interested in keeping it. They'd like to gift it to the town. I'd like to maybe take a look at that a little closely, just have a spot holder for it now. Probably take a look at it with Margaret, maybe take a look at it with Steve, and then maybe a board member or two, and just take a site visit to see if there's any issues.
Somebody's interested in buying it.
No, this one would be gifting to the town.
Yeah, but this is the one that's no road frontage, correct?
No, this one has road frontage.
Okay, it's a different piece.
Okay. We can just talk after, let me know.
Yep.
What are you thinking? Article 22 is Paxton Municipal Light, for our long-term contract with them. They handle all of our streetlight repairs. According to Mass General Law, Chapter 30B, in order to have contract over a certain length of time, we have to have approval by town meeting to do a 10-year contract for them.
What do we do, 3 now?
I think we did 2 5-years, I think.
5 years?
I think so. I think we had 5-year with an extension for 5-year. I think that's what it is. So we need approval for the second set. Article 23 is an amendment to the door-to-door sales bylaw. This is crafted by the Chief of Police. We have a current bylaw now. And this makes it a little more detailed, a little bit easier to understand. Maybe what I could do is have Dave come in. He'll be here actually next week when the presentation comes back in. Presenter comes back in. Maybe I can have him talk a little bit about the changes there. Article 24 is a placeholder. Steve had requested this, that I make some changes to the stormwater management bylaw. And he did give me an email, and I'll incorporate those into next week's draft warrant. Article 25, this is something that's been talked about. See where it goes. I figured I'd put it on here for discussion purposes. That's the quorum issue. A lot of towns have changed their minimum quorum amounts. Some of them actually gone to even zero. I was thinking about reducing ours in half. As you know, we've had some town meetings where we're struggling to get 100 people at an annual town meeting where people are calling their neighbor to come to, because we've only got 90 people. So that's just something that, in case we ever in a situation where we need a special town meeting, again, we have 50 now, the reduction to 25. If you want to keep it the same as is, that's fine. I just know that going back, I think it was a year ago, we had an annual town meeting where we couldn't start the town meeting because we didn't have enough people at the town meeting. Okay, so that's not a good thing when we're trying to, incorporate a $20 million budget and do everything else we need, that we don't have enough people. So I'm interested in hearing comments on that. Zoning bylaw changes, Article 26 and Article 27. And those are, I have some language that's coming in from the town planner. As part of any zoning changes, the planning board is required to hold a public hearing and then make a recommendation to the town meeting. And then it requires a 2/3 vote to adopt a zoning change at town meeting. One is to allow tattoo parlors in a certain part of town, and the other is common driveways. So I'll get you some more information on that. So Article 28, this is the one that some towns are trying to do this. Actually, there's most towns in Massachusetts, I think, that we're one of only 80 out of 351 that still have an elected treasurer collector position. So as you know, we're a $20 million organization. There's a lot that goes into running the borrowing, running all of the money, and handling all the money. Most towns have moved to this format. Some have done it for town clerk as well. I'm not looking to do that at this point. I don't know if I ever will, but treasurer collector certainly requires a lot of education, a lot of experience, and right now it's based on a popular vote at an election. So we were fortunate this year that, and in years past, I think what's happened is you've historically had someone who's been working in that office maybe transition into that elected position. It worked this last time. But I'd like to move into the direction of that it would be an appointed position, that you could advertise, you could require a degree, you could require experience, and you ensure yourself a professional person getting that job, rather than just a popular vote. Whoever gets the most votes gets in. I'm not comfortable with that at this point. I know most of the towns in Massachusetts have moved away from that direction because of the complexities that go with town government these days. Certainly with all the laws and as you've seen from our auditor, all the things that we have to do. When you're running a $20 million organization, I don't know too many $20 million organizations that have someone elected off the street to then handle their books and handle all their financing. And that's what I'd like to move towards, professionalizing that position. Not that it's not, the people that we don't have there now are not doing a good job. The way the statute works is that the person that's in there can stay there until such time, that they want to vacate the position, they want to go to another job or retire, and then at that point, we would be in an appointment by me. As always, I usually have a committee hiring people. We have, for example, when we hire a police chief, you have police chiefs from other towns sitting in. You have, we hired Steve as utility facilities director. We had a member from the sewer commissioner, water commissioner. So I certainly wouldn't be a sole appointment by myself. At the end of the day, I'm the authority, but I would have certainly input from a committee of people interviewing for that position. So under the statute, it also requires a vote at the election. It requires both. So you'd have to vote, the town voters would have to vote it out on a ballot question at the annual election, and then they'd have to vote it on this as well. So this vote would be contingent upon that passing. Okay. So I'm open to hearing any conversations you have on any of this. We have 2 more weeks. We have next week. I'll fine tune this a little bit more, and then the following week on the 30th, you need to close the warrant. I'll have the budget finalized, all the numbers finalized. And I can either add things or take things away. If you're not comfortable with things or you want to change certain things, let me know. Thoughts on anything at this point?
Did you want to hold on a more detailed discussion of these items? Or?
Well, why don't I'll go into the budget in a second, but any questions on any of the articles now? Because we do have some time, we have a little bit of time. Any feedback would be great. If you're not ready to do that now and you want to talk to me during the week. I know, John, you and I are going to try and have a meeting tomorrow. We're going to try and meet tomorrow. Sent you an email back.
Oh, okay.
But, talk about some things. But, if anyone wants to talk to me or send me an email, but obviously I got to make sure it's in line with open meeting laws. So if there's any feedback that you want to offer me now.
I'm just wondering, are we looking to add additional articles on here for discussions we're having very soon, such as the road.
Well, that's something, yeah, that's something we have to talk about, that, and then also the capital plan, there's two big pieces on there in terms of the
Right.
salt storage shed and the radios that we're not gonna be able to do again this year because of the available free cash or lack thereof. So those are, yes, so there's, so when after they vote tomorrow night, so next week on Monday, I'll come in with a capital plan for Article 16, 17, I think. And we'll have to have some discussion about whether or not we want to ask for debt exclusions for certain large capital expenses that are only getting higher in cost and getting more, we're putting ourselves in compromising positions by not funding those items, and I think we need to at least put them on the floor to try and get those done in that way. And then the roads project that you're gonna hear Bill and Steve talk about in a couple of minutes. Yes, that absolutely, is something that you guys will need to consider about putting a ballot question on, if that's something you wanna do a debt exclusion for, okay?
So there's nothing to prevent us from going higher than 28 articles?
Oh, no.
So we're still, okay, this is not,
No,
This is
same thing
just-
with, and
this
same thing
is
with the ballot, we don't have to,
status
the
report,
ballot
that's
doesn't
all.
close until April 7th, so
okay.
we have the next 2 weeks to finalize the warrant, finalize the ballot, and move forward from there, so.
That was more my question. I know these things will be added. I just want to make sure we're gonna have enough time to.
Any quick thoughts, or move on?
Move on.
Outrageous
So as
there.
part of this discussion, I'm just gonna take 2 minutes to go over the updated budget part that I sent you. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pass those down.
Is that the same thing I would have
Yep.
printed off?
Yep.
Okay. I'll just have
Yep.
my notes on this one.
For you, sir?
Okay, so I started off with just a summary of last week's budget presentation or update. If you will, I made the same presentation at the Finance Committee that and discussed with you guys last Monday. That was on our new revenues coming in at 385, our general government operating budget with our increases that we had at that time, which I talked about, a very modest increase of 1.5% at 128,000. The initial Spencer East Brookfield came in, their preliminary budget, if you will, their numbers that they came in, and then the Bay Path budget came in, giving us that $907,000 deficit. Since then, the activity that I've had some adjustments in health insurance. Our health insurance numbers did not come in very warm and fuzzy, if you will. Most towns I've talked to have all been near 10% or higher. We're in that group. So with that, we had an adjustment to our health insurance cost, going in the wrong direction of $74,000, which means we would have a $201,000 or 2.4% increase over FY15 to our $8.5 million budget, with a new deficit of $982. Okay. Knowing that we will be on the hook for the minimum local contribution requirements for both school districts, and then setting everything else in terms of aside from that, I knew that in order to get a balanced budget, I would need to make $130,000 cuts in the town's government budget, going backwards on that 201. And then if we did that, and then all the additional local money and the additional transportation costs were outside of the budget and were contingent upon an override, that would give us a balanced budget. Follow me so far? Okay. So even with them doing
Just
that,
return-
we'd still have to make cuts.
We have, so what was our deficit last week when you first presented these? It was not 100?
The paragraph above, John?
Yes.
907.
Last sentence.
I'm looking at the,
The new one of 982?
you say we need cuts in the amount of 130,000. That's with these additional, with all
Okay.
these adjustments?
So last we were at 907, and actually 908 and change. I added the 74,000 in new health insurance costs. That adds to our deficit. And the
Okay.
deficit grows to 982.
Yes.
If I subtract the additional local contribution and the additional transportation costs that were above last year for the school district, that takes off 853,000 off of that 982 and leaves us with about $130,000 in cuts to make on our side to balance the budget.
I thought that's what we had last week before the adjustment in health insurance. Am I
I didn't make any, we didn't have any cuts last week.
We didn't have any.
No, but I mean, that was, I thought that's what we had to cut last week, and you said to bring it, to bring just the town's budget into balance. So this 130,000 reflects the $74,000 adjustment in health insurance?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm recalling incorrectly, then, if this is the new number, fine, 130,000.
Right, so last week it wouldn't have been as high, well, I take back, it would have been higher. because of the 74.
right.
Last week the number was like two would change, 230 maybe, or two, it was 201, man, something like that.
Two and change.
Yeah.
Actually, I take back, it was like 200. Remember I had, yeah, you're right, I did have a memo last week that had the 907,000 with the full funding, and then if I said on the very bottom, the last sentence I had in that memo was that if they only charge us the local and increases, it was about 200 grand, right? So now you take off the 74 and you get the 130.
Okay, all right,
Yep.
I'm following.
Yep, yep,
I'm
you're right. I
following.
know what you're
Okay,
saying. Yep.
All right.
All right. All right, so these are the general government cuts that I proposed. All right, so we're in a position where we have to make some reductions on our side, simply because the minimum local increase in education is eating up $376,000 out of our 385 in new revenue. There's nothing left after, basically nothing left after, okay? And then we have our health insurance increase, we have our pension liability increase, we have our obligation to our employees that's been negotiated, and any other budget changes, okay? So with that, we have to go backwards. So the 130,000, this is how I came up with 130. 1,000 from the Board of Selectmen's expense account. I think you only have a $5,000 expense account. It's cutting $1,000 from there. We had reserved some money for conferences and seminars. $1,000 for the performance management program. That's the lady who was going to be here tonight. She's not coming back next Monday. That's funding them next year. We're going to eliminate that. The Finance Committee Reserve Fund was $15,000. I'm going to reduce that down to $5,000. Board of Assessors, I had level funded replacing her. She's retiring. So it would be, by eliminating this, it limits my flexibility. I have within my purview under the personnel bylaw, I have the whole range of steps 1 through 5 to put anyone on that scale if I think they're qualified enough. All right, this puts me in a position where I have to start them off at step 1, okay? Which certainly affects your ability to hire. 9,500, I cut our, I think it was $175,000 budget in IT, reducing that. That's, again, new computers, replacements. The town clerk adjusted her copier lease agreement. She had a $500 reduction. This is a big one, police department. So we're expecting a sergeant to retire in June. My plan by doing this would be to take one of the other officers. We're going through that promotional plan process now. Would be to take one of the officers, move it to sergeant, so we still have 3 sergeants, and then not hire that 16th officer, okay? Until after, at least, we get through the budget season, the recap in the fall. All right, so that would be from January 1st to December 31st, not fill that position.
Do we really need
If we go to a budget crisis and we go through the process of a failed budget, failed override, district-wide meeting, state coming in, then I'd look at getting rid of that second 22,000 or 23,000. You understand?
You want the 3rd sergeant?
Absolutely. Chief's been talking for the whole 5 years I've been here about the need for a 4th sergeant. So I would take one of the officers and move him to a sergeant, and then not fill the rookie position, if you will, position 16. That would save us 23,000.
Right.
Okay. UNF reducing GIS expenses that is in that budget by 3,000. There's still money in there for some of the administrative costs that we have. This 3,000 was reserved for training. Highway Department, we have money allocated for dams and for stormwater. We're making a reduction to that by 25,000. Snow and ice, I had increased it by 20,000 to again start going up. It would be going up only 10, so reducing that by 10. Making a cut in gasoline by 10,000. Closing the senior center at Fish and Game, and then getting rid of the rent, and then moving them here to Great Hall would save 10 grand. Employee benefits, reducing the amount that we have reserved for reimbursements by 4,000. And our general insurance, I had forecasted at 10%. I'm reducing that down to 5%, hoping I come in line with that And if not, then again, that'll be a change that'll happen in the fall. We'll have to balance the budget, or in the spring. If it comes in at 7% or 8%, I'll have to add that money back in.
So we lose free cash next year to balance it.
If we have to.
Okay.
So, and Steve's hearing this for the first time. I apologize to Steve for the first time hearing about his budget, but by doing this, we're not losing any staff. We're not laying anyone off, I should say. We're not eliminating any positions totally, except for that one officer position. There's a potential that position could go away. We've had the same number of officers since 1998, so this is not going the good way. But that could happen in the fall. But this is my plan right now for balancing the budget, $130,000 in cuts on our side. If you guys have other ideas, or don't want something on here, let me know. But again, we have to come up with $130,000 just to meet the minimum increases for the education expenses. Those are our obligations, those are assessments, we have to pay that. Okay, by doing that, now we have the new summary. Again, the 385 in the new revenue, we've reduced the town's general government operating budget from a 2.4% increase at $200,000 down to a 0.85% increase at only $72,000 more than last year's $8.5 million budget. The minimum local increase for Spencer East Brookfield is 3.18% or $182,000. Bay Path, their total increase is $194,000. So the additional minimum education assessments absorbed $376,000 or 97% of our new revenue in FY16. This combined with other adjustments and the decrease in our general government will give us a balanced budget if all the additional money that the school is looking for above the minimum was carried forth through an override. The last page, as you can see, these are the adjustment numbers from last week's budget. We started with a 385. That's our new revenue. The 182 comes off that. The 164 comes off that. The 29 comes from that. So there's only $9,000 left in our new revenue to go towards everything else. We had additional cherry sheet charges, even though we had some additional money from local aid come in. That's part of that 385. We also had additional charges. The general government increase is only 72 grand. That's got to go be accounted for. I have additional indirect reimbursements over last year because their budgets went up. So when their budgets go up and our budget goes up, they pay more indirect costs. It's $10,000. We had 2 students going to Smith. We had 1 student move to North Brookfield, so now it's their problem. Overlay transfer, we are using money to account for additional tax title. That's new from last year. And then a small adjustment in the abatements gives us a zero balanced budget. Okay, so that incorporates the $130,000. The last 3 pages is just for your benefit. So, as I told you, I was at the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District Subcommittee this afternoon, meeting at 4 o'clock. I presented this information to them last week. The superintendent was out of town last week. She was back. Also met with, there's 3 members on the subcommittee, including the chairman, Mr. Hayes, and then also the controller was there. So I explained to them our situation. They had explained to me that a budget that they had sent to us was a preliminary budget. It was what they felt they needed to do in order to start moving the district from a level 3 to a level 2. Knowing that the money might not be there and that it would require additional discussion and then a possible second look at reducing some of the items there. So that meeting today was sobering for them, as these meetings are sobering for us, and that they had to start making some reductions, and they are doing that. Today, they discussed that. They have another subcommittee meeting tomorrow. They have a school committee meeting on Thursday where they'll present those reductions to the full committee. And then next Tuesday, I believe they're going to schedule a public hearing on the budget, and then they'll issue us the budget, say, Wednesday next week, and time for us to close the warrant the following Monday. So we're up against it here. So what I can say from that meeting, that it was very positive, and that they were positive for us in terms of our deficit situation. Not positive for them, and that they're making, obviously, reductions that they don't want to make, and that is going to affect their ability to move the district forward. Just like I don't like to see, obviously you don't like to see us making reductions on our side. So that's the process that they're going through. So I think it was welcoming to see that they were at least listening to what we had to say from our revenue problems, and our budget deficit problems with the minimum increases and our obligations. So with that, I'm hopeful that things will move in the right direction. From an operating budget standpoint, I think that one of the biggest problems we're gonna have is the transportation assessment. So transportation last year was proposed to be funded at 90%. The 9C cuts reduced that mid-year. We had some discussion with Senator Goby when she was here about trying to refill that back in through a supplemental bill, hopefully. The problem is that carrying forward into FY16, we now have the loss of revenue or reimbursement from the state means that cost gets added to us. So of their $1 million line item for transportation, 70,000 is being added on just for costs going up. And then 180,000 or 187,000 is coming back to us as a responsibility or obligation because the state's not funding that item as much as they were proposing to last year. So I don't see how they're gonna be able to reduce that much. I did ask them to talk to their bus coordinator, talk about looking at their routes, knowing that gas has come down, seeing if they're in any position to talk about a new contract or a revision of the existing contract to get that $187,000 increase for us down. If that 187 doesn't come down, let's just say it stays at 187, either A, you have to ask for an override for it, or B, we have to make $187,000 in cuts because we have to pay for regional school transportation. It's not part of the regular assessment. So they can cut this position and reduce this position and cut supplies here and cut supplies there. At the end of the day, they're trying to do that. That's 670,000. That was ours. They're working that down. The bus I think is going to be a little more complicated. So that's something to think about as you're moving forward to the next couple of weeks. I'll have conversations with the business manager and the superintendent about ideas, and I'll talk to you guys about those as well. But that one, I don't know if they'll be able to get rid of as much as we'd like.
That's very frustrating because the carrot that they threw out in front of the towns to go regional was transportation and funding that at 100% years ago. And I don't know how many times they've actually reached that level. But as far as this town's concerned, from last year to this year, I consider that a loss of local aid. And for all the talk about maintaining local aid, that hurts as much as any other line item being reduced. So
That's a great point. Do you think we should write a letter to our legislative delegation as they begin their review, the Ways and Means committees in the House and Senate, and talk to them and let them know that $187,000, that loss in revenue to us is, there's a net loss of local aid this year because of that.
I consider that local aid with the other two line items. So that was going to be my next suggestion to the board, was that we send letters to our delegation, probably wording it in that fashion, that as we sit here, we consider that a reduction in local aid.
So transportation is always sat outside of local.
It's not factored in the minimum
Okay,
local.
all right. Oh, that's gonna be a tough one to swallow. But that's,
And I'm sure the schools see it the same way, so, obviously, so.
So basically from a timeline standpoint, the subcommittee will meet again tomorrow. I've asked them to talk to their bus coordinator about things that they can do, look at their busing contract. They'll have a meeting on Thursday night where they'll present all of their budget discussion to the full committee, and then a public hearing on Tuesday. So I'm back here when we're back here on Monday at the meeting, I might not have much information. Only, probably some discussion that happened on Thursday, but I don't think a vote will happen on Thursday. The vote will happen on Tuesday, the following night, and I'll be here at a finance committee meeting. So I don't know if we want to divvy up some duties, and some people go there, and I'll go to the finance committee meeting. And then from there, we'll have less than a week to then close the warrant on Monday the 30th. The finance committee has to have a public hearing on the 31st, and they'll vote their recommendations at that point. The warrant will be closed. and then, and we'll have to forward any ballot questions to the town clerk at the same time, so. That's the process, and then there'll be some downtime between April 7th and the town meeting on May 7th. Okay.
Okay, very good, thank you. Do we want to move on to the, unless there are other questions in this subject area?
Budget, warrant, anything? Discussions? We can talk about it the next 2 weeks too. There'll be plenty to talk about, I'm sure. Okay, so next on the next item on the agenda, and I apologize again for not having the PowerPoint projector set up for Bill Scarpati, who's here from FST, and also Steve Tyler's here from UNF. So you have in your packet, in your information, you have the letter dated March 11th, 2015 from Bill. And he's the Principal Asset Management Specialist for FST. He's been here a couple times. The number's not going down, Bill, but he's here regardless. He'll talk a little bit about what PCI means, and I think we should talk about, after this discussion, about, again, we were talking about it in the fall of 2012 with the Financial Management Planning Committee about putting a debt exclusion question in front of the voters because of the conditions of our roads. I think we need to seriously consider doing that now. This number's not getting any better. The roads are getting in worse condition, which means the PCI rating is going down, and the cost continues to go up. So with that, you guys want to come on up? Good to go? So they do have some handouts and stuff, and also the brochure, the packet of information that you guys had in your packet.
Do you want me to give them this, Bill?
Yeah, we can work off of that PowerPoint hard copy.
Perfect.
Do you all have a color report?
They don't have a color one, they have the black one.
We'll work off of that. So, thank you for having me again. Just here to kind of update the board on our 2015 street conditions report, which hopefully you've all had a chance to look at. We started back in 2009. We did an initial study, a town-wide assessment. We looked at all the streets, and since then we've been coming back each year as part of a pavement management system, updating the system to continue to monitor the metrics, as Adam alluded to. It's the same story, you know, the PCI has dropped. It was a 54 5 years ago. Today it's 51. More importantly, the backlog, the cost of all these repairs is significantly increased to $23.9 million. That's 1.2 million more than last year, and 10 million more than the initial study 5 years ago. So there's been sort of a dramatic shift in the condition of streets. So we once had a bunch of streets that were sort of in the middle of their life and needed preventative maintenance, and now they sort of have shipped over. So now we're looking at system-wide, you know, deteriorating conditions. And as part of our project, we used the pavement management software, a very sophisticated software package that allows us to evaluate different funding scenarios, basically to optimize the town budget. So it's all about doing the right thing at the right time. But more importantly, you got to have sort of a budget allocation strategy to ensure that you're getting sufficient funding for that cost-effective long-term plan. If I can, I'd like to point you to this chart. I don't know if we can all see that, but it's a histogram of where we stand today. To the left is where the chart is showing the number of miles in the different PCI categories or ranges. So you can see the large bar to the left between a PCI of 20 and 25. That represents 16 miles of roads that are in need of base rehab. And that is the most expensive repair category. As a road deteriorates, it sort of goes through these intervention phases. Roads start up in the do-nothing condition category, and then they work their way down, especially if maintenance isn't being done. But those miles not too long ago were in need of resurfacing, but because of insufficient funding and trying to do the right thing, certainly the town has tried to do the best with little money they have, where to have a balanced attack where you're doing some resurfacing, some crack sealing, some patch paving. But unfortunately, a lot of these miles have shifted over, and it's all about you certainly want to get additional funding to tackle the bigger problems. What we like to see on this chart is we like to see more of the piles to the right side. Obviously in the do-nothing condition category, crack sealing, because we can fix a lot more miles with very limited dollars.
Is that histogram as of a certain date? I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's, yep, that's the most recent survey. That's the latest and greatest. This was done in January, so right before the 9 feet of snow. So I'm sure conditions, especially with the freeze and thaw cycling that we've been experiencing, there's probably a little decay in the network. Yeah, I'm just looking at this map here now, and it's not showing very well.
It's not going to show anything.
Yeah,
really.
color-wise, but basically, if you were to look at where we were, a snapshot of 5 years ago versus today, you see a lot more red and yellow, more poor conditions. I mean, there's obviously been some green streets, downtown where the Selectmen has made an investment, and it pays off, but it's a very small investment. It's nearly not enough to improve town-wide conditions. Like Adams Street, Pleasant Street. If we look at the next chart, this shows us the PCI distribution in miles by treatment band since 2010. More of the same story here. You can see the piles of streets in the different treatment band categories, where most of the miles back then were in need of preventative maintenance, and today most of the miles are in need of structural improvement, which is your resurfacing, your deep mill and fills and overlays. Looking at the next chart, basically shows the same. This is the backlog, the cost of bringing up the streets to a near perfect condition. As I stated, the backlog is $23.9 million. About 300,000 of that is in need of preservation maintenance. The difference is in your capital type repairs, your structural overlays and base rehab. And just to remind you, these costs are the pavement cost only, and it's very natural to, when you're doing resurfacing, is to do some of the sidewalks, the curbing, some minor drainage. And then certainly with base rehabilitation, when you're reconstructing the street, you're doing roadway safety improvements, vertical, horizontal alignment, major drainage problems. Those are costs that are above and beyond this $23.9 million backlog. So keep that in mind.
And some of those other costs would be if we need to do surveying, additional engineering, permitting, and some of those things which would be needed on things near wetlands.
Especially if they're
We're
complicated.
looking at something like Paxton Road, there's small bridges on there that are in addition that might need to be replaced.
So we looked at 5 different funding scenarios. Your 5-year scenarios. The first one to the left there is what we're calling the approximate historical budget. This looks to spend $2.5 million over the next 5 years. Then we looked at a scenario that would maintain today's PCI of 51. That requires $5.5 million over the next 5 years. And then we looked at what it would take to maintain the backlog. Let's keep at the 23.9. That looks to spend $10.5 million a year. Then we looked at what we're calling a proactive approach to increase the PCI, and this looks to spend 14.5. And then the aggressive approach is something to not only improve the PCI but to lower the backlog over time, and that's 18.5 million. Again, these are just the pavement cost only. If you look at the bottom, you can see the line chart what the resulting PCI would be 5 years out for each of these scenarios. The one solid line represents where we were or where we are have been historically with the PCI. So there's different opportunities to spend different amount of money to improve that PCI. And the top line is the aggressive approach, and the bottom one is that historical approach. So if we continue to do things where we're going and like it's, very well is trending, the PCI will be dropping.
Bill, you said our PCI is 51, and obviously the aggressive approach gets us up to 78. And how do you get to that 78? Is that like an average, what a good community is at? I mean, how do you...
Yeah, we like to see communities between 75 and 70. Low 70s is good, because once you're up there, for example, Adams, Clark Street, 5 years from now, you'll be, if you do some crack sealing, which is anywhere between 50 cents and $1.25 a square yard, you'll bring that right back up to 100, get a life extension on it. Another 3 years, you do the same thing. So it ends up being cheaper in the long run to maintain roads that are, built properly and engineered. So we like to see, 70 is a good number. Spencer is by far, unfortunately, one of the lowest PCIs we've seen. Yeah. The backlog, the next chart shows us what the future backlog looks like as a result of these funding scenarios. So you can see the aggressive approach is that bottom line really driving down the backlog to where it historically was. So any of the, proactive, aggressive approaches are certainly very good trends and, path to follow. So again, just to kind of reiterate, these budget scenarios only include the pavement costs, for like pavement milling, reclaiming. There is some money for the police. The funding scenarios do not include sidewalk, utilities, stormwater, sidewalk improvements, culverts, bridges, and any of the right-of-way, land taken or permitting and engineering. So it depends on what road segments that are up. And like I said, it's not uncommon to spend easily between 20 and 30% more, especially on your structural improvements and your base rehabilitation candidates. So we're proposing an $18.5 million plan to get Spencer back on the right track. Given the current conditions in Spencer, this plan is front-loaded, as all of them are, so we're trying to quickly interject funds right away in the early years to try to stabilize the network conditions. So by front end loading it, you're able to do your preservation maintenance and still go after your, poorer streets. And here is a list. This is just a draft plan. This is proposed future work for year one. So you can see we're doing a lot of crack sealing, preservation, patch paving, but also we're addressing Charlton Road, Paxton Road. These are, really in poor condition and need to be addressed as soon as money is available. Also, we've got some drainage improvements tied into this. In year two, same, balanced approach. We're doing some maintenance on our good streets, preserving them, keeping them up in the do-nothing condition category, and then we're gonna finish up Paxton Road, move on to Thompson Pond Road, Bacon Hill Road, and then we've got some drainage improvements in here as well. So the next slide just more or less shows what's being done based on the list you just saw. And in conclusion, the town of Spencer should really follow the proposed plan to address system-wide deteriorating conditions. And just the inflation alone has had a severe impact on the cost. And naturally continue with preservation maintenance. We want to still do the good streets so they don't further deteriorate. We made a good capital commitment to those. We want to keep those in good shape. And then lastly, just, continue managing your pavement management system so you have a good understanding of, system-wide conditions. And with that, open it up to questions.
Yeah. The first thing right off the top is, with a recent bond issue, we had $11 million approved through a bond issue for 31.
There's $11 million that's included in the transportation bond bill that was approved, actually last year by the House and Senate, and then it went to the governor. And the governor's the previous governor has not released it, and the existing governor has not released it.
Okay, well, we're talking best some case scenario here, and it's high on 3 reps' wish list that they're going into caucus with the governor soon on. So let's assume that we get our wish and that happens. How much of that comes off the top of this plan? Nothing?
31 isn't on here.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
Part of it is, but the
Just one
$11 million
small section of it is.
the $11 million
small
includes
section.
drainage and everything
Right,
else.
exactly.
So it's not like 11's coming off of
But that's only a small
23.9.
section, Steve, right?
Right.
Correct, and it doesn't include any drainage improvements. In that
Right.
section, there's at least 2 culverts that need to get replaced.
That's one clarification
It
on
helps.
that.
Yeah, no, I understand the question. It's that is the only thing in here, that's 600,000. To me, the change in the proposal, the total dollars would be negligible to none.
Yeah.
And this is a question I asked a while back through the FMPC. Was there any kind of prioritization of these roads based on importance for transportation, or is it just basically we drove down every street and did a straight PCI on every street, and that's what happened? Obviously, there are some roads that are very important as far as economic development and
Commuting.
As far as the selection of the roads, honestly, I wasn't involved in that selection, so I was really them making a determination of picking things that went across all the different groups of conditions of roads so that they could spread the money across all the different areas. When we actually develop a plan, it would be more of a publicly vetted plan, and it would probably mix and match, some of those things, and that's when we would start to account for what you're referring to.
great.
So what would that do then? Change the order of the roads that you worked on if you're gonna weight them with a certain kind of value that Tony's talking about?
The answer is yes, it would change the order in the
Okay.
year that it would go in. Yes.
Ultimately, it doesn't change their need, but it just says maybe it moves them around on the list that get first attention?
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a network priority ranking and NPR value that's assigned to each street. So if you have 2 streets that are a PCI of 5, and one's a dead-end street, and the other one's a Paxton
Okay.
Road, you're naturally gonna do the Paxton Road.
Okay.
It focuses on looking at the functional class of the road, more traveled. And Steve is right, where you have streets that are on the verge of going from, $8 a square yard to $18 a square yard. You wanna address those, so there's, a budget allocation that's spread across to control the deterioration on certain streets.
Get them before they get more expensive.
Yes, I got it.
And
Yes.
then also the schedule will adjust with other things, like, let's say, for example, Paxton Road's our #1 priority. It's probably not gonna get done in the first year, because we're going to need to look at some engineering on Paxton Road, some permitting on Paxton Road. So it would take at least a year to get to that point. So in the first year, we're gonna be targeting roads that we can get to right away. Don't have that path of resistance to get to them, so we'll get all of those things publicly, establish our priorities, and so a lot of things will go into determining the final schedule.
So it's good to hear that in this process, there will be consideration for, this is all infrastructure, but critical infrastructure as opposed to, comparison to two roads, same level, Paxton Road, and I know there's mitigating circumstances, but
Yep.
putting the critical ones a little higher up on the list or getting those done as soon as possible.
Yeah, to not pick another road, Paxton Road versus some road that only has 100 vehicles per day on it.
Right.
Exactly.
Steve, to go back to your comment, I didn't follow what you were saying, maybe I missed something, but the chair noted the $11 million allocated in the bond. You're saying it would make a negligible difference here? If that were to come through, it wouldn't bring this number down substantially?
Well, the $11 million is probably, the $11 million in the bond bill is a number based on widening Route 31 by a couple of feet for the entire 3 miles. The more realistic project that's being designed by District 3 and hopefully going to get funded through the Transportation Improvement Program is more like a $6 or $7 million project. And that includes probably $1 million or so of drainage. And those type of costs aren't built into this. So yes, that one road will be improved. There will be a difference with regard to the overall payment index of the town and what goes into this, but it's not going to be a ratio of $4 million versus $20 million. It doesn't mean like it's 25% better. It just has to go, we would just have to refigure it. I think negligible was probably a little too weak of a word by me, but it's not a 1-for-1, definitely. It's not like the $11 million, you're asking for 20, how about if we just give you 9?
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing like that.
And I brought that up because that'll be the questions you're asked. Because there are people out there who are expecting $11 million to come our way once the governor releases it, and that it would have a greater effect on this plan when we go to town meeting and ask for the funding. So,
Yes, and the $11 million isn't really like it's a line item where it's more. The $11 million is an earmark.
And the
in a
11
large
million
fund.
really isn't in here,
No, correct.
because that's a different funding process. The only thing that $11 million will do is maybe take you from 50.4%, it may get you to 54%, because you're only talking 3 miles of road out of 30-something miles, you said?
120 in town.
Yeah, but I'm saying the
97.
hottest, so.
and I'll let the guys who know this industry better than I correct me on this, but hearing that we're not including a drainage component to it, and I really don't, in the end, I don't want anyone to come back to this board and say, you did this
why
process
did
in a
you do
half,
that?"
you know
Right.
what way.
Right.
I think we should, whatever we request should include,
And that was my next
I think
question.
the numbers we said was 20 to 30%.
yeah.
So, I mean, and that's what we're looking at.
So if you're looking at $18 million funding, you're actually looking at 24.
We do need
Right.
to do that because what you're gonna be doing is you're gonna be putting money into a road and it's gonna deteriorate faster because of those drainage issues are still gonna exist.
Well, you're gonna have
You're not
drainage,
gonna
you're gonna
pave a
have.
road when you got a bad culvert going underneath.
Right.
Okay? You're gonna check
Which
that
we
all
know
out
they
before you
sink
pave it. If
and you
when
hit
it's
them
all
and-
running out, you're gonna fix it.
Right, but in the end, it looks
Water
like
and sewer
we'll probably have a
projects.
$23 million
Right.
project as opposed to an
Exactly.
18.
Exactly. Maybe even
18.5.
more.
Yes.
I figured it's probably roughly, you could add 6 million anyway.
Yes.
Looking at a $25 million aggressive project.
Yeah.
On the aggressive approach, yes. that is the number that we,
Just because of the cost of drainage
Feel
and
that
some,
people's
you know, some of these.
Permitting, surveying, everything else.
You know, easements, whatever you're gonna be
Sure.
faced with, I mean, so.
Shorten somebody's driveway by 3 feet, you know?
I remember we did the stance earlier, Steve, we also had a detailed report that went road by road in this town, correct? Is detailed back up to this, I thought?
The PCI for each road and everything.
I don't know what level did you prepare, because it's more like
Yeah,
an
we
update
have-
versus
no,
a
we
repeat.
can-
PCI is
Yeah.
available, not here.
No, I understand, I'm not asking for that, I'm just saying, you know, eventually.
But you're gonna need it.
We're gonna mark, if we're gonna market this thing,
Yeah,
you
oh, we
know,
know the PCI of each road, yes.
Yeah, but like it'd be like a PDF I
Yeah,
could put on the website, say this is it.
31 South.
yeah.
What's that?
Yes, we could generate to that.
Yeah, I don't have it with me right here in front of me.
it's like
but
this-
we certainly
It's
have it.
pretty thick.
It's like this big.
document.
Yeah.
It's literally.
Yeah, just gonna say.
Yeah, but I think you would want that list, you know, even though as scientists and engineers, we're trying to, you know, plan or, you know, get the computer to spit the right thing, it's still, a computer output and it needs, you know, input, you know, of, you know, the socioeconomic factors and other things that it's not being considered, to make the plan real.
But to me, the best situation would be have that document there and make it searchable by road, if someone wants to go in there and pop in their road and.
We had it when it was first done on '09, I think we put it up on the website. People can download it and they can search for their road, their segment, because it's not just road, it's
Right, it
divided
breaks
up,
it
each
out.
road's divided up into certain segments or lengths. And you'd have to go and find out which
Right.
section, so.
I'll speak for myself, not for this board, but this thing, you know, we have discussed this to every year. And it's not for lack of concern for this project, and so we always tried to find the sweet spot to get this out in front of the voters, and there has not
Never is.
ever happened.
Never has been.
So, we've got to put this out there. It's time. So,
Thank you, gentlemen.
anything else from the board before we release these fine gentlemen?
Just, Bill, would you be open that if we had, say, a public hearing down the road, let's say in the next couple of weeks, the board votes to put this on a ballot for a certain dollar amount, which also would require a certain article in town meeting for the appropriation. And we had just an informational, would you be willing to come and just talk and answer questions from the public if they have any questions on it? And I'll make sure I have a projector for you.
A question, if you took a less aggressive approach between maintaining the backlog and the proactive approach, what, to get that PCI up there, up into the mid to high 60s, and I understand that you would like to see it in the 70s, do you then we'll have a higher number of much better roads, and then we'll still have a few that are just
Joe.
just totally destroyed? I mean, what's the price of that? You upgrade it all, and you have some stretches of roads, presumably ones that are lesser traveled, I would suppose, that are really in deplorable condition. Is that what we're left with versus trying to?
Something has to give, and if something's gonna give, I'd rather it be the worst street, because it can't get any worse. It's gonna cost you base rehab
Well, once you're
$28
at
to
base,
$32 a
that's the
square
bottom
yard.
anyways, right?
But if I've got something that's, you know, going from 50 cents a square foot to $8 a square foot or a yard, that's where I want to focus my money. I want to stabilize the good streets, and that's what pavement management is all about. It takes the money that you have, the little money that you have, and do the right things with it. You know, yeah, we would love to fix all the worst streets, but not a smart idea. It's not the right thing to do. I mean, certainly if there's safety issues, you know, then that's one thing that takes precedence, but, you know, you're gonna have some streets that are left off, and I prefer them to be the worst streets. You know, try to make them safe. Perhaps you come in and, you know, rather than reclaim it and regrind it up, you come back and you do a chip seal, you know? Perhaps you do a little drag and leveling, get the shape back, the crown, give it a new riding course. I mean, it's not gonna last 20 years, but, you know, maybe you get 6 years out of it, you know, to buy you some time.
I guess the key is trying to understand what an average PCI gets you, and it's not that all the roads in town are pretty good now. It's like some are really great and some are gonna be really bad.
Okay.
If we did something less than the aggressive.
This might kind of clarify that a little further, John, in that even right now, no matter what our PCI is, I'm trying to do a little bit of everything. And definitely, like Bill says, trying to focus on the ones that are at that transition point, but don't really have money to address all of the ones in that transition point. And don't know that we ever will have all the money that we need. But if you get the PCI up harder, then that money can spread across maintaining more roads further. Does that make sense, the way I worded that?
You can do more for less. I mean, in
Yes,
theory.
Your dollars will go
you could-
farther.
Right,
It's a lot
your
easier to
dollars will
maintain
go
that.
farther in maintenance, across more roads. And then my other concern with the less than aggressive approach is that during the process that you're doing this work, the roads that you're not working on are gonna be declining. And at some point, probably before you pay off this bond, you're going to be in a situation where you need to get another bond. Because you've done your work in say 5 years, but then 10 more years from now, you're back to only putting in $500,000 a year into it, because your PCI hasn't gone up as high as it would need to be to spread that $500,000 further across all the different types of road repairs. Then the roads are going to have been declining during that additional 10-year period since. Did I get that? Kind of across?
I've got another question. These dollars that we're spending, these are, the cost is on materials only? We haven't built in anything to bring on staff to do any of this? This is all materials, correct?
It is, it's all materials that's in there.
Just
No, but it includes installation.
Includes installation and grounding.
Yeah,
It includes everything.
Okay.
It's the pavement itself.
It's not just the cost of buying the
But it's
pavement,
putting it
it's
down.
putting it down.
Buying it and putting it in place.
Yeah, my question
Not
there
town
is,
staff.
I want to
We're not
make
in
clear,
positions to do this
we're not
project.
growing town government by putting this project,
No.
and we're paying for a project. We're improving,
Correct.
that's,
Well, that's a good question. Is this something that you would put out to bid and have, because you're spent $4.5 million worth of road in year one, let's say, is that something that you would put out to bid and have contractors do, or would you do some or all of it with town employees?
No, by far, the vast majority of it would go out to bid. The only thing we might do with town employees are something that's far off where we can go do a drainage repair or something like that, something small scale. And stay out of the way of
Which
all.
I was kind of getting to your question.
Right,
We're
that's-
not adding 10, 15 people
No.
to do
that's,
this, right?
I just wanted to, make that clear with the climate that we're
No,
in
and-
right
and
now.
Just like when they
even,
did
trying to
Water
do all
Street,
this much
Tony,
work
they
at
come
once,
in,
that's- we're gonna
the whole
need
company comes
engineering
in, does the
support.
whole thing. We do a little here and there touch-ups, but they do the majority of it.
Including drainage and including drainage where it's called for?
They don't,
things like-
they don't do drainage.
We can do drainage, but it's very slow and in small quantities. We're not gonna be doing drainage like for Paxton Road,
Yeah.
for example.
That's what I mean,
It would-
if you're
it would take
talking
us
about
years.
drainage, it would be
Yeah,
done
if there
by
was
a
only one
major
culvert that needed to
contractor.
be
Yeah, one
done, or
catch basin, something like
one
that.
pipe, yeah, we'd probably do
Okay.
it. But like Paxton Road, there's probably 30, 35 on that road.
Okay.
There's
That'd
no way
need
you
to be
can
part of
do
the
it.
larger
Right.
contract.
No, we would go to smaller back roads, something, or just
Yeah.
something that's far off from where,
Yeah.
Okay.
not a big project. In the last year, we did 4 culverts, last summer.
Great, anything else from the board?
Yeah, I got a question.
Sure.
Adam, on our excise taxes, approximately how much does that take into the town budget-wise?
We bring in about 1 million, 1.1 million in excise tax per year. That's one of our local receipts.
Right, but the people out there think, I pay excise tax and that goes to upkeep of the roads.
No.
Can we put it out there, what does $1.2 million of that, just say, get you?
Not much.
Not much, right?
No.
Right.
Probably what, seal coat 10 streets?
Well,
Well,
We don't
it
use it
doesn't,
for that.
I mean,
Crack-
it
No,
doesn't,
but I'm
Correct.
saying,
Correct.
if,
even though that's
Their
there,
perception
what it's for.
is it goes towards fixing the roads. But at 1.2, what does that really get you? Nothing, correct?
it goes
Maybe
towards the highway
5, 6,
budget.
7.
I mean, indirectly.
I know, but
Yeah.
Are you asking me if we had a whole 1.2
if you had a
instead of a
1.2,
$500,000?
yeah.
We would do a little, basically twice as much
Seal
is
coating,
what
crack
we did
filling.
in last year, yeah, of everything, twice as much crack sealing, twice as
So
much.
not a lot. Doesn't
No,
get you
not a
anything.
lot.
Will we
la-
still be talking, we
Last year,
have
we did a
roads in
total of a
trouble,
mile of all
obviously.
those things. Yeah, this year we would probably, if we're gonna do 2.
But that's a misconception out
Oh,
there,
yeah.
is
No,
that
that's a good
your
point.
excise taxes is paid in to fix the roads, but it's not. It goes towards a budget for more than just that.
Right.
Correct.
Oh, sure, sure.
I don't know that any of the excise tax.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way.
Well, that's what they were originally set up to do. I mean,
Yeah.
years ago, that's what I was, in theory, you know,
It's become such a regular part of the receipts, I don't think.
like
it's-
everything else, just like Mass Pike tolls are supposed to be just for
the pike.
For the pike, but,
Yeah, but that doesn't
right.
fly either.
right.
BTA gets some.
You know, are there any more questions from the board? Now, I have a gentleman in the back who's, this has been a project that's been on his mind for years. Did you raise your hand on something, Carl? Do you want to say, or ask something real quick?
When's Meadow Road gonna get?
I was gonna ask, the Meadow Road, that's falling apart. And what I heard, it's not on the list, and I was wondering why.
He didn't read every street that's on the list.
Well, again, the list is not town generated, and the list is just hitting some roads. And actually, the strategy with Meadow Road, for me, since I've been here, has been that Meadow Road is of the few roads left that we have a funding opportunity to get state funding. And I don't, you know, since I started doing that with the town of Spencer, 2003, we had Maple Street funded, we got Main Street funded. The other roads that are eligible are Route 31, both segments, and you've seen how tough it is on the southerly segment, and it's gonna be the same battle for the northerly segment. So those are two roads that are eligible, and I could foresee getting funds at some point in the future. And then there's Meadow Road. Meadow Road does have a legitimate chance of getting state funding. I have been working on that since I've been here, every avenue that I possibly can. And those avenues are the Route 31 corridor study. The primary purpose of that was to look at Route 31 North and to put Meadow Road on the map. I dragged Meadow Road into that study so that they would look at it. I've been telling CMRPC since a year ago that Meadow Road is our next project that we want to look for a TIP. And so Meadow Road is a project I'm trying to fund through the state. It's one of the few that I have left that I could fund through the state. And so I'm trying to use that avenue for it. And so that's why I don't want to put our money into a road where I think I can get state money in the future to do.
And if that were to materialize in what we see it 2, 3 years, what is that?
6 to 10.
Yeah.
6 to 10 for
6
Meadow
years
Road?
out anyways.
Because Main Street's gonna be coming through in 2 or 3 years. And the design process of a road takes 3 years, at least.
So what happens on Meadow Road for 6 to 10 years?
We'll
We
have to
just-
do something in the interim. We're gonna try to do some, we're looking at trying to do some things out there in the interim, but we're not gonna do the wholesale we're not gonna reclaim it and redo the base and so forth, because we're just trying to get something that's gonna hold over, because Meadow Road is getting like Route 31. It's one pothole after another, and after this winter, it's just terrible, and I am sorry for that. My office is right there, I see it every day, and that's kind of the thinking, it's a road that's in places is lost, and then the other part is that it's an opportunity to get state funding. And with that state funding, we could do a lot more than we would be able to do with this type of funding. That was part of our sidewalk betterment plan, to try to close that loop on that side of town. And with state money, we can get that level of improvement done to Meadow Road.
One more, Carl, you had your hand up one more time. This,
Yeah, it's such a heavy used road, but that I can't understand why it's not involved with this project.
We just told you.
It's a very heavily used road, and that's one of the reasons why it's eligible for state money.
Yeah.
We can take 3
It's like
million
3 million.
through a grant and spend it on that, but we can't take 3 million from a grant and spend it on Paxton Road. You know what I mean? So we can make our money go farther, utilizing grant funds and town funds. Does that make sense?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If we could take our money and spend it on Meadow Road, but then I wouldn't have a project to get money out of the state with.
Well, what can be done
In the meantime?
on Meadow Road?
Until then.
We can do spot patching. We're gonna try to look at doing the Smithville.
You're filling in with patches, and as soon as the trucks come by, it's gone again. The holes are back there again.
That's correct.
Cold patch
The
versus.
coal patch,
Right.
we're talking about a permanent patch versus the coal patch that we're doing.
We're talking, once the hot top plant opens back up, to do a whole section count, not just to do the whole, you have to cut out, like, say, 50 feet and pave the whole thing, you know, to kind of hold it together.
We're looking at doing some selective overlays in places on Meadow Road to kind of hold it over for a few years. You're right, Carl, it is an important street for all of those reasons. It's a high-traffic road, it's a high-need road, it has everything to be a priority on this list.
And like you say,
But
Carl,
what the other
everybody
roads on
uses
this list
that.
don't have is
Instead
they
of
don't
going
have
up
the opportunity for
31
state funding.
to get down the street, they take that, so it's actually like being Route 31 almost. It's a
Meadow
section.
Road has as much traffic
Right.
as Pleasant Street.
Yeah, more,
Which is
I think.
which is where Meadow Road intersects.
Probably has more.
More.
It has actually slightly more. Meadow
Yeah.
Road has slightly more. than
Became a
Pleasant Street.
shortcut for every car carrier there is.
If, based on the turning
I
movement,
drive it, so I know it.
I'm sure you hear it every time they hit the bumps too.
I know we want to move quickly to get this in front of the voters, but I also, again, reiterate, and I want this to be a comprehensive type of, I don't want to have components of this missing
And then be underfunded.
and then be underfunded and people saying that we didn't do the right thing on this project. So,
We need the other pieces.
we need all those other pieces in here. So if it's 2.3,
Well-
23, then it's 23.
We can include it in the number, the factor that he's talking about, the 20 to 30%. What you can't figure out is, you can't come up with a road construction estimate for every street segment in town.
Right.
No, you know, and you're talking about years of work to figure out and survey culverts and drainage. I think you're talking about just carrying the
The
number.
assumption is okay with me. The assumption
Okay,
you have.
that's all I'm making sure.
I know we can't do that road by
We don't think it's gonna be to the
road.
penny, but we also
Right.
know that, with Steve's background, I think we can come to some reasonable number.
It may not be at 20, 30%, maybe something different, but
I think the number is what you're talking about, like a $24 million number in total, $25 million.
that's what it is. And if we do a fantastic job, then we can give it back or whatever, or keep it for future.
It'll just go.
Yeah, well, I should say that. I'll get hanged for that.
Yeah, right.
But,
If you touch field.
but I want it to be a complete, well-run program. And Steve, I have confidence that we've talked about this many times. That
We'll all go back into the roads and
Yeah.
Right.
the best places, and the community and those involved, agree upon. Absolutely.
Well, we definitely know we got a problem.
Now, what about bridges? Those bridges have got to represent a whole separate, different cost. Is that what happens with that?
That's a good question.
I mean, I look at Hastings, I see more and more cement barriers there by the Little
Going
League
up
field every
every
time.
And I'm glad that you did ask that question, because that is something that we need to consider, is that some of our projects, like the Hastings Road, is that a $500,000 project? And when I started looking at the 30%, the 20 to 30%, different roads that number goes up, like, for example, Paxton Road. The Paxton Road is probably 30% or greater, because we are gonna need to do that culvert that's at the Moose Hill Dam. That arch pipe culvert is gonna need to get done if we're gonna go down Paxton. There's no sense not to do all Paxton Road and not do that. And then there's certain drainage improvements that need to get covered different places. Fortunately, Spencer doesn't really have expensive bridges that it owns. The most expensive bridge that Spencer owns and is responsible for is the one that I came to last week to try to get funding.
North Spencer Road.
The North Spencer Road over.
And why do we own that, since that's 31 and a state road and?
It's not a
how's it-
state
State road, but
We
not a
own
state
it.
road.
It's not a state, it's a state.
Okay, thank you for
not
that
a state
distinction,
road.
all right. Okay.
But they do, however, it was just, they do own the other Route 31 bridge,
Right.
the one that's close to the Pleasant Street intersection.
Just before Pine Grove. The state owns that one.
Right by Meadow.
Oh,
And I
Okay.
had to do inquiries to find out exactly why, but the ones that they own are just so happen to be the ones that are over 7 Mile River, and plus some railroad bridges. So they own the Route 9 bridge over the 7 Mile River, they own that bridge over the 7 Mile River.
Does it have to do with navigable waters?
Um,
Section 401 or whatever it is?
I don't,
404?
could be because of the size, but then the other bridge is the 49 over 7 Mile River.
Right.
But bringing it back to this, that is not incorporated in this plan.
Right.
Bridges are not incorporated
No.
in this plan.
Yep.
That's why we need to make sure
Yep.
what we're looking at.
Mr. Chair, I think that for me, and I think for a lot of people, listening to these numbers, the way you really get a handle on what it represents is to translate it into the impact on the tax rate and how far we borrow and.
Well, that's something I've been just writing down, is that
So the voters will give you the authorization to exclude the debt payment, okay? And then you have town meeting authorization to vote the appropriation and permission for the borrowing as well. Then it's up to the selectmen to, vote eventually on whether it's a 10-year plan, 20-year plan, or 30-year plan. What you'll need from me, and more so from our lender, is what the dollar amounts, payments, principal, and interest, and then I would then take that to the assessor, who would then factor that into the tax rate. So it's going to be a big number.
Yeah.
You're talking about even $1 million a year for 30 years, easy. So, or more.
Another thing just came to my head. Of all these roads we have in this list, I know we were also looking to target proactive betterment projects for certain roads. I mean, is that also an opportunity for us to lower the impact on this?
No, because those are betterment goes for private roads.
Just for private roads.
A lot of it is dirt roads, lake roads.
Right.
It's a real tedious task to try and get those approved. Steve and I I've tried to do it with a couple roads. I've got one that's been going on for 10 years. It's getting people on the street to commit their own funds, get involved in the planning, the engineering, all that. Some roads, it's just hard to do because they're only occupied by certain people in the summer, so they're not willing to cough up the money. So we don't have a plan, and we haven't had the time to go to each house on every private road and say, would you be interested in a betterment? And if you are, come see us and talk to us about it. We've had it a couple instances with, I know Steve's doing one with just a water line alone is a real hard process. So yeah, there's an avenue. We have some funds set aside for it in a like a stabilization fund. I think we have 130 grand set aside. But even that could do maybe one public, one private street.
Yeah, you gave me my answer. That's another effort we can look at.
It's a totally different
That's a totally different animal. We can look at that
Totally
as another
different
effort.
animal.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, again, thank you for once again bringing this out in front of us.
Just one more question, Tony.
Sure.
So if this is a 5-year plan, it's a 5-year program,
Yes.
and using up whatever money we might approve, at the end of those 5 years, we're at a point where then to maintain the roads, it's crack sealing, what do we have to do to, going forward from there, what's the annual investment we need to make to not let it slip back again? Is that in there? Did I miss that? I mean, with the budget we have now, allowing some, growth for, maybe a small amount of growth, are we gonna have enough going to maintain the
current
roads?
budget we have now would not maintain that stuff. We would still be,
slipping.
we would be going back down on a
We'd be
downward.
slipping.
We'll be generating a backlog every year by
Okay.
underfunding, relying on Chapter 90 only.
Right, Chapter 90.
And I don't know if Bill has calculated that number, but I estimated probably closer to the $1 million a year.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
And then it could be
it's
different.
probably between 500 and $1 million.
Well, twice what we have now,
Right,
3
yes,
times.
Right,
Twice.
twice. You're about 5 now.
Can that be worked into a plan? I mean, like Tony said, you want to make sure we're left in a good spot where we're not handing off another problem for
You're talking about,
town.
you're talking about
For me,
another
it's
10
another-
million bucks, 500 a year for 20 years.
Yeah.
Or
We're really talking about a $500,000 budget increase.
talk about,
Well, and I think the question
it's
was,
going
if it was,
into
if it was
Right.
incorporated into here, it's another 10 million.
Yeah, exactly.
if it was a
Right,
20-year borrowing, and you
Right,
set
yeah.
aside and reserved it, that's what I meant, but I think,
It's just gonna be longer till you start going back down.
Before you head the other way.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, and then you're gonna be borrowing money and paying interest on something that you're not gonna spend until you're 20, it doesn't make any
Right. I mean,
sense. You basically, what Steve needs to do, was saying, is that Chapter 90 is not enough.
Right.
We somehow need to work that other $500,000 into the operating budget, just like we need to work a lot of other things in the operating
Okay.
budget, but that's,
I see.
it should be an annual expense, an operating budget expense, and it should continuously go up, 500 this year, 525, added to the Chapter 90. Chapter 90
Which is why we're in trouble now.
does not go that far. I mean, you do one survey project and a little bit of crack sealing and bang, your
And a
500's
perfect
gone.
example, John, is we did North Brookfield Road in 2008 and 2009. Completely redid that road.
That was 3 years worth of Chapter 90.
Right. And now that has not been touched since then. This is 2015.
What was the year it was started? It was,
208, 209,
okay.
and now it's 215, 7 years later, we ain't done nothing. So there's a road there that we spent, you know, 550,000 or
I think it
more
was
than
one
that.
point two million.
Is that what it was?
I think it
You know?
was 3 years of chapter 90 at 400,000 a year for 3 years. We didn't do
On
any,
just that
we did
one
any
road.
chapter 90 projects.
Now we haven't done anything.
we
It's
did
still,
that.
it's
I mean, that
still in
includes
good shape
engineering
right
and-
now, John, but like you're just saying, that should be looked at this year. You know, it's been seven or 8 years.
That was Rob.
All right.
Yeah, Rob did that.
I don't know what I would have spent 3 years with chapter 90.
Yeah, well, it was
That was-
ridiculous, but that's besides the point.
That was,
You can't go too fast.
that was BS before Steve.
So,
It's still in do-nothing condition category, yeah,
Yeah.
5
Yeah.
years later, so.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, that was a road that, you know, you did the right thing on. But, yeah, that's.
and we hauled dirt in, we took dirt out, we hauled dirt
I
in,
wanna
we
go
took dirt
there.
out.
8
know.
inches, 10 inches.
I think if we had the money, we'd do a lot more of that.
Yeah,
so we've got to figure out the, fit in public hearings on this, so the public is.
But what I'll do is I'll draft a ballot question and I'll throw in the 25 number and then, we'll talk about, is that what we want to get to Laura? And then after that, we'll have to figure out all the
All
the
other
taxpayer
logistics
impacts.
and-
Yep.
Right.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Bill, I can't help but ask, you must have a number of towns you've done this pavement study for, and you make these return trips back
Yeah,
to
yeah.
check on the condition and monitor and say, this is where the town stands?
Yeah, yeah, and, yeah, there's several communities that, right from the initial study, bought into it, and, made the investment, the bond, and it's been going up and up, and, it's, it's good, it's a good feeling. But then there's others, like yourselves, this is not a common problem just to Spencer, it's all the surrounding communities.
How, like East Brookfield and the towns that touch us, how are they compared to us?
I can't say any of the adjacent neighbors. Probably the best resource is CMRPC to look at.
He's only been
their-
working in towns he's contracted in.
Yeah, yeah, but it wouldn't surprise me, once you get past, 495, the Worcester belt, there's more rural roads and there's more acceptance of, the character, a lot of people are used to the bumps and.
Character, bumps, I like it.
There you go, that's a good way to
The
put it.
potholes and you kind of get, accustomed to it.
bumps should take you out
They
of the
must
seat.
carry extra horsepower.
But, there's a big difference when you're driving on a smooth road. Certainly, I would imagine the snow plowing and maintenance costs go down. You plow it once instead of over and over again because you got ruts and ice buildup and.
But that was a good question. I mean, as far as our list of comparison towns, have you been contracted, has he been contracted any of those?
He does a lot of work, 128 inside, 95.
Yeah.
I don't know if you even have.
Yeah, like the closest one would be Hopkinton, and they're like 70, PCI 72. They have a 110-mile road network, and we just recently recommended $1 million a year there to sustain their backlog.
Did they spend something, did you recommend something and they spent something to get to 70?
Yep, they've always kind of followed our recommendation each year. It wasn't like a big time, it was more like a start small and kind of grow and, see what it does. And that's kind of, they kind of picked the middle of the road program and they've been going at it ever since. But
They were kind of in the middle of the road when you started.
True, true.
And they work money into their operating budget.
They do, and they have a pretty, good sidewalk program that they invest probably $1 million just in sidewalks. Lexington, and yeah, there's towns that can afford to increase the tax rates. It's not easy to do, but certainly something is better than nothing. There's just so many primary roads in Spencer that really could benefit from a good riding surface.
Yeah, I'd also like to be prepared. You know, we have, the 23 is the aggressive. I think we should have the proactive version created as well.
They've given us that number, it's just a matter of which one you guys vote to put on.
Right.
They've given us the information.
Right, but I mean, that information should be out there so that, you know,
Whatever information you decide to vote on is what information we'll put out there.
I'm saying right now, as a member of this board, I'd like to see both
You mean like
scenarios
two
put
questions?
together.
You mean
Looking at
put
20
two
million
questions?
versus 24, it's $4 million difference.
You mean put two questions out there, one for 24 and one for 20?
No, I just want both scenarios drawn out,
Oh, discussed.
Discussed.
Before we.
or documented. I mean, we could talk about the 23 all we want, that'll still give us, you know, we'll just know that this version 2 is the conservative or proactive version. In case there's any kind of resistance, I say we should be prepared.
Now, just for clarification finally, and sorry, I keep adding these questions, but even on the aggressive approach, we still have a backlog. And that backlog is, we maintain that backlog then with $1 million a year in highway maintenance? Twice what we have now, is that what that means?
Yeah.
That is what that means. I don't have a copy of the letter that you have in front of me. I did not receive it.
Right, there's a certain dollar amount that we need to be spending every year to maintain. And then there's a certain dollar amount we need to spend just to get to a certain point that we want to be maintaining at that level.
But that backlog what's the condition of the backlog? That's the,
The difference between 171 averaged out over all the cost of the roads.
Yeah, so there's a PCI increase with that backlog, and that backlog just represents the cost at that time of repairs. What is it, 15, just 10 million?
It looks like maybe 11.5.
There'll always be a backlog
11.5.
unless every single road in town is at 100, is that
Right.
correct?
Right.
Exactly.
So,
All right, so nothing's gonna be, everything isn't
always gonna
going to
backlog.
be in
You're
a
always gonna have
nothing
a
condition category.
okay.
You're gonna have some crack sealing, you're gonna have, you're gonna have that one or two that are in base rehab, you know?
Okay, so you still might have a few,
Well, you're gonna
Some
have
bad
some.
roads.
It's
Yeah,
okay,
that's a
it's
given.
okay to have a backlog, as long as it's sustainable, so that you can maintain that backlog and have a decent PCI. What you don't wanna do is have a backlog that's spiraling out of control and
Well, you can never
unable
get
to
to it.
address it.
While your overall PCI is at an unacceptable average.
Right.
I mean, it's a vicious cycle that'll never end
It never
unless
goes
we
away, but
increase
You gotta stop it.
substantially our budget to
so at
address
the very
this.
least, you'd want to do number 3, the 10.5, to maintain the backlog. That'd be like the minimum, if I'm reading
Yeah,
this
that's
correctly.
$23.9 million you backlog.
Right,
Yes.
but know that your
But it's
annual
remaining.
maintenance is gonna be a little higher.
Okay,
That's right.
so and maintaining the backlog would get us back to where we were in the beginning when we first did the study. You said it was around 60
No,
or?
keep
No,
us where
that's
we are
where you
now.
are today.
We'll hold you at the 50.4 or whatever it was.
yeah, but he means a dollar amount where the backlog was only 13 million 5 years ago.
Yeah, the aggressive will get you where you were before.
Right, okay.
All right. Okay. We'll discuss it some more, but that's helpful.
There'll be more conversations on this. I think we're
you,
good, gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
That was the last item on our agenda. Is there anything else you want to discuss, Mr. Administrator?
Done.
Board?
Clear.
All set? All right, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman?
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
you
you,
very much.
everybody, and good night.
So we'll meeting the 23rd? Are we meeting the 23rd?
Yep.
23rd here for regular business meeting at 6 PM in McCourt Social Hall. Thank you very much. Good night.